At 14:30 hours local time, the side of a fuel tank car tore open and a sheet of burning diesel climbed into the summer sky. The car was standing still, on a single line of track, 22 miles behind the front. 11 tank cars were burning within minutes, and the smoke column climbed somewhere past 1,000 feet, high enough to be seen from 9 to 12 miles away across flat steppe. It was also seen from orbit. A NASA fire detection satellite logged a large thermal anomaly at that exact coordinate, 22 miles. Hold on to that number, because Russia chose it on purpose. The track running between Verkhniy Tokmak, Molochansk and Fedorivka is not a quiet branch line. It is a fuel artery. Rail is how Russia moves diesel and equipment into occupied Zaporizhzhia and onward toward Crimea, and this section carries the traffic that keeps armored vehicles, generators, and pumps running across the southern front. Moscow understands how exposed that dependence is. It has been building an entirely new rail link from Rostov-on-Don through Berdyansk to Crimea for the specific purpose of relying less on the Crimean Bridge. That project is a promise about the future. This line is what the Russian army actually has right now. And a train loaded with fuel for Russian forces was running along it, across open ground between the village of Levadne and the town of Molochansk in Tokmak district. Russia had done the arithmetic, and the arithmetic was sound. First-person view drones are short-range weapons. They are built for the contact line and the first few miles behind it. And for much of this war, Russian logistics planners had been able to draw a mark on the map showing where that threat ran out. Fuel trains were pulled back past it. 35 kilometers, 22 miles, was engineered safety. Cross that mark, and the war was supposed to become somebody else's problem. For the men on that train, the distance was doing the work of an air defense system. No shelter, no escort, no reason for either. The steppe was empty in every direction, the track ahead was clear, and the danger was behind them, falling further behind with every mile of rail. 4 Ukrainian units had spent weeks making that mark meaningless, not by building a drone that flew further, by something simpler and stranger than that. Then the train stopped. A fuel train in motion is a hard target. A fuel train standing still on single track, with no siding to pull into and no way to reverse a loaded consist back out of open country, is not really a target at all. It is a cue. And what Russia had failed to account for was never the drone. It was who was standing along the flight path, passing it forward. This was not one unit's operation. It took 4, working under 2 separate commands. The drone element came from Kabul 9, a unit of Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Directorate, the HER. Alongside them worked the 65th Separate Mechanized Brigade, the Alpha unit of the Security Service of Ukraine, and a group called NEXT from the State Service of Special Communications. Above all of them sat the Khortytsia and Zaporizhzhia operational groupings, deconflicting airspace and timing. 4 organizations that do not normally share a radio net, stitched together for one train. That structure is the answer to the range problem, and the range problem is worth understanding, because it is the entire reason this strike should not have happened. An FPV drone is a short-range weapon. It is a racing airframe with a warhead strapped to it and a camera in the nose, and the pilot flies it by watching that camera. Everything depends on an unbroken link between the operator's hands and the aircraft. That link is the limiting factor, not the battery, not the airframe. Ask what one of these is built to do, and the honest answer is 3 to 5 miles out and back. Call it 4 on a good day, less into wind, less again over broken ground. That is the machine. 22 miles is more than 5 times the number it was designed around. Most of these machines are built for the contact line and the first few miles behind it, which is exactly why Russian planners drew their safety mark where they did. So how do you fly 122 miles? You do not build a better drone. You lengthen the chain. Think of extending a rope by tying shorter lengths together. The rope does get longer, that part works. But you have not made a longer rope. You have made a series of knots, and every knot is a place where it can come apart. Each relay in the chain adds distance and adds a point of failure, and the further out the drone goes, the more knots stand between the pilot's hands and the nose camera. That is the trade Ukraine accepted. Not more range for free, more range for more fragility, held together by people and aircraft positioned along the route who each carry one segment of the link and nothing else. Which is where the numbers turn cruel for the men on the train. A freight train on this line moves at perhaps 25 to 30 miles an hour. Every minute it runs, it covers roughly half a mile of track. But the drone chasing it is not steering on instinct. Every correction the pilot makes has to travel outward through the chain, and every frame of video has to travel back. And along a chain that long, the picture is always slightly behind the world. The pilot is not flying where the train is. He is flying where the train was a moment ago, and closing the gap by anticipation. Over open steppe, against a target moving in a straight line on rails it cannot leave, that is a solvable problem. It stops being solvable if the target does anything unexpected. The train did the one thing that made it easy. It stopped. And a stationary fuel train on single track is not the same problem at all. It is a completely different one. To understand why that mattered, stop looking at the train and look at the track underneath it. This is a single track line. One set of rails, carrying traffic in both directions, with passing loops spaced miles apart where one train can pull aside and let another through. It is the cheapest way to build a railway and the most common way to build one across open country, and it works perfectly well right up until something on it stops moving. Picture a one-lane road through a mountain pass. Traffic flows fine in both directions as long as everybody keeps moving, and the pullouts are used in turn. Now stall one truck in the middle of it. The road has not lost a truck. The road has lost the road. Nothing behind that truck goes anywhere, and nothing coming the other way does either, and the only fix is to physically remove the obstruction before anything else can move at all. That is what a burning fuel train does to a single-track line. The cargo is the smaller loss. 11 tank cars of diesel is a bad night for a Russian fuel depot, and depots get resupplied. What does not get fixed overnight is scorched ballast, warped rail, and burned-out sleepers under a consist too damaged to tow away. Andriushenko put the real result not at the tank cars, but at the line itself, describing a break in the railway that would take weeks to repair. A Ukrainian assessment, not a confirmed one. But the logic behind it does not depend on whose estimate you trust. Fire that intense, sitting on the rails that long, does not leave usable track underneath it. Now put a clock on it. Say the repair crews need 2 weeks on that section. Burned sleepers pulled, ballast dug out and replaced, rail relayed and aligned. 2 weeks is roughly 330 hours. In 330 hours, a fuel train that had been rolling on schedule would have made that run and come back several times over. Instead, every one of those consists has to go somewhere else, and the nearest alternative routing adds distance measured in whole extra days per load. The strike took an afternoon. The line pays for a fortnight, and every train behind it pays too, in fuel that arrives late or arrives by road in smaller quantities along routes that are themselves under drone observation. One strike, and the whole southern supply picture gets more expensive. And here is the part that should worry Moscow more than the fire. Ukraine did not need to send anything back to find out whether it had worked. There is a satellite system called FIRMS, the Fire Information for Resource Management System. It belongs to NASA. It was not built for this war, or for any war. It exists so that forestry services and disaster agencies can watch wildfires develop anywhere on Earth, and it does that by scanning the planet for thermal anomalies and publishing what it finds, openly, for anybody who wants to look. FIRMS recorded a large-scale fire at the strike site. Think about what that means for the arithmetic of denial. A drone unit does not have to risk a battle damage assessment flight over a defended target. It does not have to wait on a partisan report or an intercepted transmission. The confirmation arrives from a civilian environmental satellite, in public, from a source with no stake in the outcome and no reason to inflate anything. Russia can dispute Ukrainian footage. It cannot dispute a heat signature logged by an American forestry instrument. But a satellite only sees temperature. It sees where the energy was released. What it cannot see is the thing that actually made this strike expensive, and that has nothing to do with the 11 cars that burned. The expensive thing was the drones themselves, not what they cost, but how many were spent. This was not a single strike. Ukrainian reporting describes the train being hit repeatedly, over and over, on the same stretch of track. That distinction matters more than any other detail of this operation. One FPV hitting one tank car is a good day for a drone crew. What happened between Levadne and Molochansk was a sustained engagement against a stationary target, run through a relay chain 22 miles long, sortie after sortie, for as long as it took. Watch what that does to the fire. The first warhead opens a tank car. It does not blow the car apart. That is not what these weapons do. It punches through the shell wall, and diesel begins pouring out onto hot steel and dry ballast. Diesel does not flash the way gasoline does. It has to be heated, atomized, brought up to temperature before it will properly burn. The warhead does exactly that. Fuel becomes vapor, vapor finds the ignition, and the first car goes up. Then the fire starts doing the work. Tank cars stand coupled end to end, steel skin almost touching steel skin. Radiant heat from a burning car pours into its neighbors from a few feet away. Pressure builds inside a sealed tank with nowhere to go. Relief valves lift and vent fuel vapor directly into open flame, and seams begin to fail. What started as one breached car becomes two, then a run of them, the fire walking down the consist in both directions along the line of couplings, and the crews kept coming back. Each new arrival did not have to find a target. The column of smoke was the target, visible from 9 to 12 miles out, standing over flat ground with nothing around it. Fresh drones went into cars that had not caught yet. Ukrainian accounts describe fires breaking out in multiple places along the train. There was nothing on that stretch of track to stop any of it. No siding to break the consist and pull the undamaged cars clear. No fire train within useful reach. No way to reverse a burning fuel consist out of open country, and no way to drive it forward through the section already alight. The crew's options had run out at the moment the wheels stopped turning, and everything after that was just a matter of how long the fuel lasted. 11 tank cars burned. The smoke column stood over the steppe and could be seen from 9 to 12 miles away. 250 miles above it, a NASA satellite swept past and logged the heat. No casualties were reported in this strike. By the time the last drone in the chain came off the target, the fire was doing something no drone could have done on its own. It was burning down into the roadbed itself, into the ballast and the sleepers and the rail, turning a fuel loss into a track loss, and a bad afternoon into weeks of repair. Militarily, the accounting is modest and worth stating plainly. At least 11 fuel tank cars burned, according to Ukrainian accounts, along with damage to the track beneath them. There is no confirmed figure for how much diesel was lost, no confirmed repair timeline, and no independent damage survey. What is independently established is narrower and harder to argue with. A large fire at a known coordinate on a rail line that carries fuel, logged by a civilian satellite system with no stake in the war. Strategically, the target was never really the cargo. Russia's fuel logistics in the south run on an assumption, and the assumption is measurable. It says that past a certain depth, rail traffic is safe from the cheapest weapon on the battlefield. Every timetable, every loading decision, every choice about where to park a loaded consist overnight rests on that number. 22 miles was supposed to be past it. Take the number away and everything built on top of it has to be rebuilt. Trains move at night instead, or in shorter consists, or with escorts that have to come from somewhere else. Fuel shifts onto trucks, which carry less and are watched just as closely. And the new line Moscow is building from Rostov-on-Don through Berdyansk to Crimea, the one meant to reduce dependence on the Crimean bridge, inherits the same problem before it carries its first load. A rerouted railway is still a railway. It still runs on single track through open country, and the mark on the map that made it safe no longer exists. That is the real damage. Not 11 cars. A planning assumption that used to hold and now does not. Ukraine did not stretch the safe zone that afternoon. It deleted the idea that there was one. And the patience was never really about the train. 4 units spent weeks assembling a chain that had no reason to work, and then waited, not for a target to appear, because the trains were always going to keep running. They waited for the moment Russia believed it had gone far enough. Which part of this operation impresses you more? Getting a drone 22 miles past where it belongs, or knowing for certain it arrived without ever looking? Tell me in the comments, because I genuinely don't know which one is harder. If you want more breakdowns like this one, subscribe and turn on the bell.